Ancient Egyptians believed death was not the end, but the start of a dangerous journey to a beautiful afterlife. To help them on this journey, they used a mysterious guide called the Book of the Dead. This wasn't a book like we have today, but a collection of spells and magic words written on long scrolls. These spells promised to protect the dead from terrifying monsters, angry gods, and even the worst fate of all, disappearing forever. The Book of the Dead was full of secrets and special knowledge to help the dead reach paradise. But what were these dangers based on? Were they real, or were they powerful symbols of the unknown? Stay tuned to uncover the mysteries. Imagine yourself as an ancient Egyptian facing the ultimate mystery, death. But your culture doesn't see death as the end. It's the start of a perilous journey to a beautiful afterlife, if you know the secrets. That's where the Book of the Dead comes in. This wasn't a book like we have today, but an ever-changing collection of spells, prayers, and mystical knowledge painted onto long scrolls of papyrus. It was your ultimate guide to navigating the treacherous underworld and reaching paradise. The story of the Book of the Dead begins thousands of years ago, around 2400 BC. The first spells meant for the afterlife were the pyramid texts, carved directly into the walls of pharaohs' burial chambers. Think of them as an exclusive pass for royalty to reunite with the sun god Ra in the heavens. These texts were filled with protective spells and warnings, but also strange instructions. Hieroglyphs of animals or people were sometimes left incomplete, likely to prevent them from harming the dead pharaoh. Later, new spells emerged known as the coffin texts. Now, the afterlife wasn't just for kings and queens. Wealthy nobles and officials could also get their hands on these spells, painted inside their coffins or on tomb walls. This was a big turning point. The afterlife was becoming less exclusive and more accessible. Around 1700 BC, things changed again. In the city of Thebes, the spells we recognize as the Book of the Dead started appearing. Now, instead of carved stone, they were written on papyrus scrolls, making them a portable guide for the deceased. These scrolls often included illustrations showing the dangers and tests you might face. Demons, grumpy gods, and even a terrifying second death where you might simply cease to exist. The Book of the Dead includes spells for everything from preserving your body after death to outsmarting hungry monsters in the underworld. One of the most famous, Spell 125, describes the weighing of the heart ceremony. Your heart was placed on a scale against a feather representing truth. If you'd been a good person, your heart would be lighter and you could pass on. But if it was heavy with misdeeds, a horrible monster would devour it. The Book of the Dead evolved for centuries. Some spells were changed and others disappeared completely. What stayed the same was the belief in a dangerous yet wonderful afterlife. Eventually, though its use declined around the 1st century BC, the idea of a perilous path to the afterlife remained a powerful concept in Egyptian culture and beyond. Think of the Book of the Dead as a customizable guidebook. The richest and most powerful Egyptians could tailor their book to their individual journey. One of the greatest examples of this is the Papyrus of Ani, a stunning scroll created around 1250 BC for an Egyptian scribe named, you guessed it, Ani. This masterpiece of ancient art and spirituality isn't tucked away in some dusty tomb. It resides in the British Museum, but its journey there is a story worthy of Indiana Jones. In 1888, the papyrus was discovered in Luxor, Egypt, among a trove of artifacts being sold on the antiquities black market. Enter E.A. Wallace Budge, a determined and slightly shady British museum curator. Think of him as a Victorian-era treasure hunter with a knack for dubious deals. According to Budge's own colorful account, just as he was about to snag the Papyrus of Ani, the Egyptian police raided the dealer's stash. Not one to be deterred, Budge cleverly distracted the guards with a feast, while accomplices tunneled under the building and rescued the precious antiquities, including the Papyrus of Ani. Smuggled to London, hidden in tin boxes, the scroll ended up at the British Museum, and Budge got a hefty bonus for his troubles. But why is the Papyrus of Ani so special? It's considered one of the most beautiful and complete examples of the Book of the Dead ever found. Its vibrant illustrations depict the trials Ani might face in the underworld, terrifying beasts, complex gates guarded by grumpy gods, and of course the dramatic weighing of the heart ceremony. The Papyrus of Ani combines practical spells with stunning artwork. It gives us an incredibly detailed look into ancient Egypt's beliefs about the afterlife. It's not just a guidebook, it's a window into Ani's hopes, fears, and his quest to outsmart death and reach eternity. And thanks to a daring and somewhat questionable adventure, this ancient treasure is preserved for us to study and admire. The Book of the Dead isn't just a collection of instructions, it's infused with magic. Imagine a world where words themselves hold power, where writing a spell or knowing a god's true name gives you control over the forces of the afterlife. That's the kind of power woven into the Book of the Dead. Think of it like this: there are spells for everything. Some, like the mysterious spell 17, aim to give the dead secret knowledge about the gods and the universe. Others are all about keeping your spirit intact, preventing your body from decaying, and making sure you can breathe and even eat in the afterlife. There are even spells meant to protect you from the dangers of the underworld, like hostile spirits and terrifying monsters. One of the most famous parts of the Book of the Dead is centered around the weighing of the heart ceremony. This is where your heart is judged to see if you've led a good life. Spells like 26 and 30 were actually carved into heart-shaped amulets called scarabs, which were thought to protect the heart during this crucial test. For ancient Egyptians, magic wasn't as natural as prayers. It wasn't seen as something separate from their religion. The Egyptians called magic Heka, and it was closely tied to the power of the spoken and written word. Think of it like this: speaking a spell was like making it happen. Hieroglyphs themselves, the sacred writing invented by the god Thoth, were believed to be incredibly potent. Even if a spell was shortened or left out entirely, as long as the right images were there, it was still thought to hold power. The Book of the Dead also reveals the Egyptians' belief that knowing something's true name gave you power over it. That's why it's packed with the secret names of gods, demons, and places in the underworld. Imagine having a cheat sheet that lets you command the very forces of the afterlife. Of course, there's more to the Book of the Dead than just words. Many spells were meant for amulets, physical objects believed to carry magical protection. Some spells even mention the power of saliva, a substance the Egyptians thought had healing properties. While there was no single official version of the Book of the Dead, patterns did emerge over time. It wasn't until around 600 BC that spells started to appear in a more structured order, but that's a story for another day. These scrolls weren't just bought off the shelf, they were custom made. Scribes would work for weeks, even months, to create a unique Book of the Dead, even commissioned by someone preparing for their own death. But these scrolls weren't cheap. Some cost as much as a half-year's salary. The Book of the Dead wasn't one uniform text, but a vast collection of spells and images. Its size and style depended upon the buyer's budget. Some were 40 meters long, others just a single meter. They were meticulously handwritten on papyrus sheets glued together. Scribes often left blank spaces where the buyer's name could be added later, letting workshops mass-produce the texts and personalizing them afterward. The writing itself was considered sacred. In the New Kingdom, spells were usually written in beautiful cursive hieroglyphs, sometimes flowing from right to left instead of the standard left to right. Later on, hieratic script, a more informal everyday writing style, became popular. Red ink was used for special headings, instructions, or the names of dangerous creatures, adding a touch of dramatic flair. Illustrations were a key feature. They weren't just decorations, but enhanced the spell's power. The quality varied wildly. Some were stunning, full-color masterpieces using precious gold leaf, while others were simple lines drawn or even lacked illustrations entirely. Often, several scribes and artists worked on a single scroll, creating a fascinating patchwork of styles. Sometimes the buyer would even finish the illustrations themselves. Unsurprisingly, the world remained unaware of the Book of the Dead's true meaning until much later. Medieval scholars, finding these scrolls in tombs, assumed they were an ancient Egyptian version of the Bible. It wasn't until 1842 that Carl Richard Lepsius translated one of these scrolls and gave them their modern name, Book of the Dead. He also created the numbering system we use to identify the spells today. Deciphering this mysterious text has been an ongoing mission. Scholars like Edouard Naville and E.A. Wallace Budge painstakingly documented, compared, and translated countless versions of the Book of the Dead. Even today, projects like the Book of the Dead project at the University of Bonn are continuously cataloging and analyzing these ancient texts. They're piecing together the Book of the Dead's evolution and giving us deeper insights into its meaning. Thanks to centuries of archaeological discovery and meticulous research, the Book of the Dead is no longer an unreadable relic. It's a portal into the fascinating beliefs of ancient Egyptians, their fears of the underworld, their hope for eternal life, and their deep-rooted belief in the power of magic and the written word. If you've enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the Book of the Dead, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the ancient world. Feel free to comment below with your thoughts or questions, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our next adventure.